Covering Dunkirk, Fredonia, and all of northern Chautauqua County, this is WCVF 88.9 FM, The Voice.
We are back. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I am your host, Matt Volz, a senior, that's gross, at SUNY Fredonia. I am still not used to saying senior just yet. I still feel like I'm introing this show as a freshman. So we are back with the first show of the new year, and it's already been quite the start to the day, I would say. So for anyone who is not currently in the Dunkirk, Fredonia area, it is absolutely downpouring outside right now. Like, I walked from my car, which is parked in the Science Center parking lot, all the way to the radio station. Not a particularly short walk, but not a very long one either. And I got absolutely drenched. I'm not wearing a hat right now for the first time in what feels like forever. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm always suited up and ready to go for these shows with my backwards hat on. My Bills hat got so drenched in the rain that it is sitting in my office in the radio station because it needs to dry out. Thankfully, I actually remembered to wear my rain jacket, so my Bills t-shirt did not get totally drenched. But yeah, I walked into the radio station about 20 minutes ago, and I was absolutely soaking wet. I had to run to the bathroom and grab paper towels just to dry my hair off, and I was wearing a hat. So yeah, it is absolutely downpouring. It feels like monsoon season outside, but we are inside where it's nice and dry, and we are back for another year of Big Blue Sports. Crazy fact, but this is true. Big Blue Sports is now the longest running non-legacy show at Fredonia Radio Systems. That title was previously held by New Music Friday on WDVL, which was run by our good friend Justin Malinowski, our business manager who graduated last year. I'm actually in Justin's fantasy football league too, which I will talk about my fantasy football team later because I think I have a pretty good team. But this show is the longest running on WCVF, and we'll have to see about New Music Friday because it could get picked up by somebody else, could continue it, which would be fantastic because New Music Friday was a lot of fun when Justin ran it. But yeah, this show. It's unbelievable to think, but it's true. This is the longest running non-legacy show on WCVF. I started this show 3 years ago as just an outlet for me to talk about sports never-endingly, how I so often do. And it's crazy to think that I've done it this many times, I've been here this many times, and it has been so much fun over the last 3 years to be able to share my sports fandom with you all, and I am really excited to do that for one more year. And the fall semester kicks off right now. Speaking of kicking off, football is back. The college football season began last weekend. Well, technically 2 weekends ago if you want to count the week 0 games. Week 1 of the college football season was last weekend, week 2 coming up this weekend. And week 1 of the NFL 2025 regular season begins tonight as the Philadelphia Eagles begin their Super Bowl defense. They host the Micah Parsons-less Dallas Cowboys tonight at 8 p.m. on NBC in the kickoff game. Of course, the Bills also playing on primetime in week 1, hosting the Baltimore Ravens in a playoff rematch on Sunday Night Football at 8:20 p.m. on NBC. Very excited for that. Shaping up to be what really could be a special season of Buffalo Bills football this year. We'll get to all that later in the show. I'll talk about how I think the Bills will do this year. I'll do what I always do and make my picks for the week, as well as I will also make my predictions for the season as we go into the season, and then we will revisit them midway through the year in about 8 weeks or so. 17 games left on the schedule. So far, right now, everybody has the same record. So in theory, everybody has an equal shot to win the Super Bowl unless you're the Dallas Cowboys. So we start, as we always do, with Fredonia sports. And again, it's tough sometimes when the semester's first starting. A lot of times sports haven't quite picked up yet, but the soccer teams actually have already seen some action, and they are at home for the annual Blue Devil Classic tournament this weekend. So the men's soccer team has played 3 games, and they've got one of each result, 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 tie. They started the year with a 1-0 loss at Penn State Harrisburg. They went up to Buffalo to play New Jersey City University, and that game resulted in a 3-3 tie. They picked up a win this week on Tuesday, a 4-3 win in the home opener against former conference rival Geneseo. And again, this weekend, the Blue Devil Classic, so the Blue Devils will play their games at the main University Stadium field, while the other games will take place at the turf field that is placed right next to it. So the first game for the men's team is Friday night. That's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. as they take on Alfred at University Stadium. The other game going on at the turf field gets started at 1 p.m. tomorrow with Buff State taking on Bryant and Stratton. That game actually will be played at University Stadium because those 2 games not at the same time. Saturday's games at the same time as Fredonia takes on Bryant and Stratton at 3 p.m. on Saturday, and Buff State will face Alfred on the turf field at 3 p.m. Saturday. SUNYAC play not too far out as the first conference game for the Blue Devils is set for Saturday, September 20th, a 1 p.m. matchup at home against Plattsburgh. Women's soccer has also had a couple of games so far. They are 0-2. They were actually out in California for a couple of non-conference games to start the season last week on Friday, falling 1-0 to California Lutheran University, and then a 3-2 loss on Sunday to Occidental College. So they are again home for the Blue Devil Classic. Their first game at 3:30 on Friday against Utica. The other game, Oswego versus Keuka at 1 p.m. on Friday. The Blue Devils will face Keuka at 12:30 on Saturday, and Utica and Oswego will match up at 12:30 as well. Women's team with a non-conference matchup at home against Geneseo next Wednesday, September 10th at 4 o'clock. First SUNYAC matchup Saturday the 20th at 1 p.m. at Plattsburgh. Volleyball also underway, and they are getting ready to start their season. They've only played one so far. That was a scrimmage last Tuesday against Allegheny College. That was here at Dodds Hall. They're headed on the road this weekend to the Barron Invitational in Erie. They've got 4 games. They'll 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday. They'll start the season Friday at 5 o'clock, taking on Geneva College. They'll face Thiel College at 7, and then 2 games on Saturday, facing Penn State Barron at noon and Bluffton University at 2 o'clock. First game at home at Dodds Hall is set for next week, Tuesday, September 9th at 6 p.m. against Thiel College. And finally, as cross-country also getting set to go, they have not began their season yet. The first cross-country meet is set for this Saturday, 2 days from today, against SUNY Brockport. The annual Cara Hall Memorial Invitational, which is here at Fredonia's campus, will be on Saturday, October 4th. That's always an excellent invitational, and it's really grown in size a lot over the last few years. When they had it when I was a freshman, I believe there were only about 4 or 5 other teams here. And last year, I think they had close to 20. So they really have turned it into an excellent invitational. They bring in a lot of schools from around the area and some that take a decent trip to get here. And the cool thing for me personally, because I've mentioned it before, that I ran cross country in high school, and a few of my former teammates actually end up coming here to run in that invitational. I've got a very good friend of mine who runs for Alfred. Another friend of mine runs for Damon. Not sure if Damon will be here yet or not. Alfred likely will be. But it's really cool to see some former teammates who I ran with for several years when we were kids, to see them still succeeding in their collegiate careers, and they have been excellent. Not to mention, one of my other collegiate teammates is potentially going to be representing her country in the steeplechase. Nationally ranked steeplechase athlete Angelina Napoleon from North Carolina State. She is unbelievable if you've never seen her compete. And everybody from Allegheny Limestone, everybody from Western New York, definitely rooting for Angie. She continues her journey in the steeplechase, and hopefully I'll get to see some of my old teammates when they all come here. I won't see Ange because North Carolina State probably will not be coming to Fredonia. That might be a little bit of a difference there, considering the fact that NC State is regularly competing for Division I national championships. But it will be really neat to be able to see some other teammates of mine, and that's always something that I very much enjoy. So the final Fredonia sport that is underway in the fall, the women's tennis season, which of course is split. It's mostly in the fall, but they end up having a few matches in the spring as well. And they've already played two. Started their season last Saturday against Brockport, fell by the final score of 6-1. And yesterday at Alfred fell by the same score as well, 0-2, but they are back at home next week, Tuesday, for a 5 p.m. match start against Penn State Behrend. And, of course, Penn State Behrend, always a friendly competitor of Fredonia. There's a lot of people who have worked in both places, so Penn State Behrend usually competes against Fredonia in a lot of different sports. And it's kind of cool to see from year to year, some of the athletes really are able to become friends across both teams, and it's a lot of fun, and it's pretty cool to watch. So we're going to take a short break. When I come back, we're going to talk about week one in college football, a couple of upsets, some really great games between some top-ranked teams, and in case I don't mention it at a few other moments in the show, the Alabama Crimson Tide lost on Saturday, which me as an Auburn Tigers fan, I very much enjoy, and we will make sure to mention that. Thanks for tuning in to the fall semester debut in 2025 of Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports. Well, the good news is that as the show is going on, I'm starting to dry out more, which is great, because considering the fact that I looked like a drowned rat when I walked into the station about 40-some minutes ago, it's good that we're drying out. I got to thank American Eagle for that, though, for real. And this show is not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. If I was sponsored by American Eagle, that would be so cool. But that's where I got my shorts from, and they're actually drying out quicker than I thought they would. So that's really cool. I'm really glad. You know what else is really cool, at risk of sounding corny? Coming to Fredonia Radio Systems events. And the most specific one that I want to bring up is our biggest event of the year, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. That's Rockin' the Commons. That is on Saturday, September 27th at Barker Commons in downtown Fredonia from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So Rockin' the Commons, for anyone who has never been to it or might not have heard of it before, it is an annual fundraiser event that our radio station puts on. And it benefits cancer research, and all of the proceeds at the event go to the Roswell Park Cancer Institute in Buffalo. And we've raised a good amount of money for Roswell before. It's a whole day-long event. We've got games. We've got food. I'm going to be on the grill again this year, and I'm so excited because I love being on the grill. It's so much fun. We have live music. That's where the rockin' part comes in. Got a great lineup of groups. And we all just we come together, and it's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's a long day, and it's a fun day for a phenomenal cause too. And we have a very good relationship with both Schools Against Cancer and the Roswell Park Cancer Center as a result. And it's something that is really fun, and I absolutely cannot believe that it's my last one. And I don't want to admit that. I don't want to admit that because I don't want to admit that I'm a senior. That still doesn't feel right. It feels weird. It feels like I just started the show yesterday. Anyways, into the next part of the show. College football is back, and it was a pretty good week one. One thing I liked about this first week of college football is that there were a lot of really good matchups. A lot of times in week one, you see your top powerhouse teams getting those cupcake games. So for anyone who's not necessarily super familiar with how college football scheduling works, a lot of times the bigger schools will begin their season against a much smaller team. Great example of that is this week, the number one team in the country, Ohio State, is facing Grambling. Grambling is they have a historic football program. They're an HBCU, but Grambling definitely a much lower level program than Ohio State. And the reason teams do that, it's a win-win for both teams. So the big teams literally pay the small teams to come play them. And the reason they do that is it's twofold. Again, for the big schools, it's sort of a tune-up game, almost like a preseason game in the NFL, where there's a huge gap in level of competition. So if you make mistakes throughout the game, you're probably going to be able to make up for them if you're the powerhouse school. And it's, again, they're a big school. They generate a lot of money, so that doesn't necessarily affect them. And they sort of get a tune-up game before the real heavy-hitting games start. On the flip side of that, for the smaller schools, they usually get a pretty good payday. And while they're going on the road, and yes, they are probably going to lose. I mean, sometimes these schools are like close to 50-point underdogs. If they do lose, even if they get absolutely destroyed, well, they were supposed to lose. So it really doesn't matter. The teams going into that game kind of have nothing to lose, because it's like, if we lose, that's what we are expected to do. So a loss doesn't hurt us. But if we somehow pull off a huge upset and win, that is insane. And they get a nice payday too. So it works out for both sides. And I think for the smaller team, they kind of get an opportunity to see, okay, this is how a big program plays. What can we learn from a game like that? So it's kind of a win-win. Usually the first couple weeks of the season are kind of full of those games. And I will be honest, week 2 definitely is full of those games. But week 1, there were a lot of really good scheduled matchups. And the biggest one was the matchup that has been hyped up for months. The number one team in the country, the Texas Longhorns, led by quarterback Arch Manning, who, of course, is the nephew of Hall of Famers Peyton and Eli Manning, the son of their older brother Cooper Manning. Texas taking on the defending national champions, number 3 ranked Ohio State. Very hyped up game, and it ended up being a really good defensive battle. Arch Manning, I will be honest, I did not see this game, but Arch Manning did not play well, did not play particularly well. And Ohio State, in a defensive battle, comes away with a 14-7 win. Ohio State they won the national championship last year, and even though they lost some pieces to the NFL, you got to figure, like, they lost their number one running back in Travion Henderson. They lost one of their top receivers in Emeka Ibuka, but that's still a phenomenal team. And Ohio State, I think this year is really going to be led by their defense, and they've vaulted to the top of the rankings after a win over number 1 ranked Texas. There were a few other top 10 versus top 10 matchups. Number 9 LSU going to Clemson and beating the number 4 ranked Tigers 17-10, which was not my favorite result as an Auburn Tigers fan. But again, another game that was more of a defensive battle than I think people expected. I mean, for LSU, you've got Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback, who is a Heisman Trophy favorite. LSU has a great offense, and not to mention Cade Klubnik at quarterback for Clemson, another potential candidate for the Heisman as well. Those are projected to be 2 of the top quarterbacks drafted in the draft in 2026. So again, it was a much more defensive-oriented battle than I think a lot of people predicted. A couple of close games, really the biggest close game that was a near huge upset. Number 17 ranked Kansas State hangs on by the skin of their teeth to beat North Dakota 38-35. Kansas State, mind you, lost at home to number 22 ranked Iowa State in the kickoff game back on August 23rd. So the question is Kansas State potentially headed for a difficult season? I mean, they're ranked 17th in the country going into last week. They're 1-1 with, I mean, their loss was not a bad loss at all. Iowa State's a good team, but their lone win being just a 3-point win over North Dakota in a game where they were very, very heavily favored to win. And we'll see how K-State is able to play the rest of the season. We'll see if maybe that game was sort of just a fluke and they're able to recover from it, or if it's a sign of some potentially troublesome things to come. Another top 10 ranked game. This was an excellent game down in Miami on Sunday. Number 10 ranked Miami beating 6th ranked Notre Dame 27-24. Notre Dame put up an excellent fight, but quarterback Riley Leonard, again, one of the top draft picks projected to be in next year's draft. Miami beginning their era without Cam Ward at quarterback. Of course, he was their quarterback last year, drafted first overall by the Tennessee Titans. But they got a pretty good consolation prize as Carson Beck transferred from Georgia to play for Miami, and he leads the Canes to a win in his first game. And it's really cool to see that Notre Dame-Miami rivalry renewed. They've had some amazing games in their history. You think back to, the late 80s when Jimmy Johnson was coaching the big bad Miami Hurricanes, and it was, you had the Catholics versus Convicts game in South Bend, which was one of the greatest games in the history of college football. It's really cool to see rivalries like that renewed. Not to mention, we also saw a pretty major upset. And did I mention that the Alabama Crimson Tide lost on Saturday? Because if I didn't mention it already, the Alabama Crimson Tide lost on Saturday. Not only did they lose, they lost to an unranked team. Alabama, ranked number 8 in the country, lost to an unranked Florida State team who went 2-10 last year, and Alabama lost by 2 touchdowns. So, Kalen DeBoer era isn't going so great, is it now, Bama? That's right. You guys don't have Nick Saban walking up and down that sideline yelling at players for breathing the wrong way anymore. I saw a video of a couple of Alabama linemen before the game were warming up with their cell phones in their hands. You think Nick Saban would have allowed that? I mean, I don't exactly care for Nick Saban being an Auburn fan, but Kalen DeBoer has to get charge of that team. I mean, that's ridiculous. There is no way. No, there just doesn't seem to be a very clear focus on that Alabama team. And to be completely honest, I think they're going to fall apart. But let's double check the schedule because they do have a matchup against a weaker opponent this week at home against Louisiana Monroe. Anybody who... So I might have to explain this a little bit. So anybody who is familiar with the absolute craziness that was the 2007 college football season, it was the greatest season in the history of college football. You had the number 2 ranked team in the country lost 6 times that year. It's never happened again. There were teams losing every single week. West Virginia was ranked number 2. They were probably going to play for a national championship, and they got embarrassed by a 4-win Pitt team in the backyard brawl. There were some amazing games. South Florida was ranked number 2 at one point. Kansas went 11-1. It was ridiculous. But it was Kansas and Missouri played with a shot at the national championship on the line. That's how ridiculous 2007 was. But anyways, part of the 2007 season, so that was Nick Saban's first year as the coach of the Crimson Tide. And it was a rough rebuild year. I mean, you're taking over from the embarrassment eras of Mike Shula and Mike DuBose, who were just not good head coaches at all. And the first year of the Saban era was really rough. It was a rebuild. Alabama lost a lot of games they shouldn't have, and one of those games was an embarrassing home loss to Louisiana Monroe. They lost 21-14, and it's one of the most humiliating defeats of Nick Saban's career. As an Auburn fan, it's one of my favorite college football games of all time. So who is Alabama playing, looking to get back on track? Good old Louisiana Monroe. I am looking to the college football gods, and I'm just saying, please, It would be so funny. Please let Louisiana Monroe pull a 2007 repeat and upset Bama at Bryant-Denny Stadium. It would be the funniest thing ever. And I hope Alabama goes 0-12 this season. So, as I mentioned earlier as well, I am an Auburn Tigers fan. I should mention Auburn got the win, beating Baylor on the road. And again, the cupcake scheduling, there's a lot of them in week 2. Auburn playing Ball State at home. You've got number 2 ranked Penn State hosting Florida International. Texas hosting San Jose State. Florida State is now ranked 14th after their win over Bama, hosting East Texas A&M. Not Texas A&M, East Texas A&M. I think that's where Sheldon Cooper went to college. I'm kidding. That was East Texas Tech. Baylor and SMU, that'll actually be a really good game, even though Baylor is not ranked and they're 0-1. They're a solid team, and SMU ranked 17th in the country. Kent State at Texas Tech. Kent State actually won last week, and that's kind of impressive considering the fact that they were the worst team in all of Division I last year. But they were able to get the win. I should mention UB as well. They put up a really good fight, actually, on the road against Big Ten team Minnesota, just ultimately not able to come away with the win. UB has their home opener this weekend, that game on Saturday at 3:30 as they host St. Francis. It's actually going to be a nice day in Amherst. It's going to be right around 65 degrees. But yeah, it'll be a fun one. There's only one really notable game that I saw on the schedule going into week 2, a nationally ranked game, Michigan at Oklahoma. That game should be a pretty good one. Again, you're talking, it's an Oklahoma team with a new quarterback after their quarterback from last year, Jackson Arnold, transferred to Auburn and is awesome, and I love him. And then Michigan, of course, they've had some turnover over the last few years with Harbaugh leaving after they won the national championship and some other players graduating and all that. And not to mention seeing how they respond from the Connor Stallion scandal, which, of course, they got in some pretty big trouble for an assistant of Coach Harbaugh stealing signs. And, you know, they got in some pretty hot water for that. So it should be a fun weekend of college football. But it is now going to be time to turn our attention to the NFL. Going to take a short break. When I come back, we're talking Bills. I'm going to tell you who I think the Bills' offensive and defensive breakout stars are. And as well, I'm also going to break down the Bills' schedule game by game and take a look at where I think some losses may come and how the Bills are going to finish this season. So thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports. It is now that time. The phone's ringing. That's funny. So it is now time to take a look at the Bills 2025 schedule. I'm going to go through game by game and tell you what I think of each matchup. And I'm also going to give you my offensive and defensive MVPs, as well as my offensive and defensive breakout stars. So we'll start with week 1, the Bills hosting the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football on NBC. It's a rematch of last year's divisional round matchup between the Bills and the Ravens in Buffalo that the Bills won 27-25. This is going to be an excellent game. And I think it's going to be a really close one, but I think it's one that Buffalo gets the win. I think the Bills start the year strong and are able to take down the Ravens in week 1 to start 1-0. Week 2, the Bills going on the road for their first AFC East matchup of the year, taking on the New York Jets. And this is one that, again, the Jets are a team that they're kind of struggling, floundering a little bit, although I do like the hire of former Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn as their new head coach. I think that's a solid hire. He'll be a good coach for them. But for right now, the Lions still a team kind of in a rebuild. I think the Bills get the win to go to 2-0. Week 3 at home, I'm excited for this one. Thursday Night Football, the Bills hosting the Miami Dolphins. I will be at this game along with former FRS members Chloe Kowalik and Alex Irwin. It is going to be so much fun. 8:15 Thursday, September 18th kickoff. And come on, the last time the Dolphins come to this stadium in the regular season, it has to be a win. The Bills get the win in this one, I think quite convincingly, to go to 3-0. Week 4 at home against the New Orleans Saints in a Sunday 1 o'clock game. If I had to go through the schedule as a whole, and pick the game that I am the most confident in the Bills to win, it would be this Week 4 matchup against the Saints. I don't think New Orleans is a good team at all, and I think the Bills, much like they did to the Texans a few years ago when they beat them like 40-0 early on, they are going to blow out the Saints and go to 4-0. Week 5, the Bills' third straight home game as they host the New England Patriots on Sunday Night Football. The return of Stephon Diggs to Buffalo. And you know what? Here's my thought for the game. I think Diggs has a couple of catches early in the game, and Chris Collinsworth doesn't shut up about it because, of course, he doesn't. But then the Bills ultimately get the win in the end. They beat the Patriots to go to 5-0. Week 6, the Bills on primetime for the third time in 4 weeks and the fourth time in the first 6 games as the Bills travel to Atlanta to face the Falcons on Monday Night Football in Week 6. I think this is the potential for a trap game, but I think the Bills are just definitely a better team than the Falcons. I think Buffalo gets the win in this one, and they are 7-0, or they are 6-0, I should say, heading into their Week 7 bye week. They come out of the bye week on the road against the Carolina Panthers, a Sunday 1 o'clock game. Another game that I think, even though I like what Carolina's building, I think the Bills right now are just a better team. They get the win, and the Buffalo Bills are 7-0, heading into the game of the year, Week 9 at home against the Kansas City Chiefs at 4:25 on Sunday on CBS. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, the works, the newly engaged Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, the officials. I mean, what? And we'll see how this one goes. It's a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game in Kansas City, which the Chiefs won 32-29. And I think the Bills, as they do seemingly every year after losing to the Chiefs in the playoffs, get revenge in the regular season. The Bills beat the Chiefs to go to 8-0, and the winning doesn't stop there. Week 10, going on the road to face the Dolphins. The Bills complete the sweep of the Dolphins. They are 9-0. Week 11, they return home for a home matchup against Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and guess what? The Bills win again. Buffalo starts the season 10-0, a perfect 10 through their first 10 games. However, first loss comes in Week 12. Thursday Night Football, the Bills traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. I think the Texans are a pretty good team, and I think the Bills, when they go down to Houston, they do tend to struggle. So I think the Bills suffer their first loss of the season and drop to 10-1. Week 13, going to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers at 4:25 the Sunday after Thanksgiving and the day after Auburn destroys Alabama in the Iron Bowl. The Bills get back on track with a win over the Steelers in Pittsburgh to go to 11-1. Week 14 at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, a 4:25 kickoff. I actually think the Bills lose this game. And my reasoning for that is that the Bills seemingly have a game at near the end of every regular season. It's usually right around the beginning of December where it's a game that's an absolute shootout and they just come up short. You figure they did that last year, and usually after those games, they end up winning out. You know, last year was different. Week 18 against the Patriots, I don't really count that because they were resting all their starters. But last year, they had the game in L.A. against the Rams where Josh Allen had an insane game and the Bills lost. They didn't lose a meaningful game the rest of the season. You know, you go back to 2023, they lost that overtime game to the Eagles in Philly, won every game the rest of the year. 2022, they lost a heartbreaker at home to the Vikings, won out the rest of the year. 21, they lost to Brady and the Bucs in overtime in Tampa. They won out the rest of the year. 2020, they had the Hail Murray against the Cardinals in Arizona, lost that one, and won out the rest of the year. And I think the same exact thing happens. I think this is just a shootout between Allen and Burrow. And on this particular day, I think Burrow and the Bengals offense gets the better of Buffalo, and the Bengals win that game. The Bills drop to 11-2. However, again, much like they did a couple weeks before, the Bills get back on track. Week 15, they head to New England to take on the Patriots. The Bills get the win in that game to go to 12-2 and sweep the Patriots. Week 16 in Cleveland against the Browns. The Browns are a mess. Buffalo wins that game to go to 13-2. Week 17, this one's going to be a game, and I don't like that it's this late. It's December 28th. The Bills hosting the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles at 4:25 on Fox. This is going to be a huge game that I think the Bills win. I think Buffalo comes out on top. They go to 14-2, and they close the year. The final game at Highmark Stadium in the regular season, the Bills defeat the New York Jets and close out the year with a win. They sweep the AFC East entirely, and the Bills win their 6th straight division title, going 15-2. My offensive MVP for the Bills is, as you probably guessed, Josh Allen. My defensive MVP is the number 1 corner, Christian Benford. I think Benford is primed for an incredible season, an all-pro caliber season. He is an excellent corner who has really flown under the radar in the NFL, and I think that he's going to have an incredible season. My offensive breakout, I might be a little biased from the preseason, but my offensive breakout is the man who made the 53-man roster, Tyrell Shavers at wide receiver. I really like what Shavers did this preseason. I've liked watching him the last couple of years, and I think Shavers is going to be a really big piece to this Bills offense, a bigger piece than people are expecting him to be. My defensive breakout is one of the Bills' rookies, one of their 4th-round draft pick from this year, Deion Walker, the defensive tackle out of Kentucky. He is massive. I mean, I would describe him as a people mover. I think he's going to have a huge impact on the Bills' defensive line because the pass rush has really not done enough the last few years, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that their interior defensive line has gotten so dominated. You got to think about Ed Oliver is a smaller defensive tackle, but he's the Bills' best one. So they've been trying to throw him in what's called the one-tech spot, which is usually meant for like a bigger nose tackle type of defensive tackle. Like, think if you're, a Bills fan who remembers like the late 90s and early 2000s, think guys like Ted Washington or Sam Adams. Those were guys who, or even Pat Williams maybe. Those were guys who were true one-tech D tackles. Ed Oliver is more of what you would call a 3-tech. He's a smaller defensive tackle who thrives in one-on-one matchups. If Deion Walker can excel in that 1-tech role and eat up a couple of blockers at a time, Ed Oliver can really be left one-on-one a lot. And I think the Bills' defensive line will be better as a result. Not to mention you've got Greg Rousseau and Joey Bosa on the defensive ends. I think the Bills' pass rush is going to be a lot better this year than it's been the last few years. And, of course, we'll get to where I think the Bills are going to get. We're going to take a short break. When I come back, record predictions for the NFL teams or division standing predictions, and I'll make my picks for Week 1 as well. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports with the final few minutes of our show. I'm going to talk about my predictions for division winners as well as my pick for Week 1, and I will announce my Super Bowl pick. So we're starting in the AFC East, and I've said it for a while. I think this is Buffalo's division to lose. I think the Bills are by far and away the best team in the division. I think the Bills take the AFC East. So Buffalo wins that division. The AFC North, again, I think it's going to be close between the Ravens and Bengals, but I think that Bengals defense is terrible, and I think Baltimore is a very, very good team. The Ravens win it. In the AFC West, as much as I like the Broncos, and I think the Broncos will be a playoff team again, it's still the Chiefs' division as far as I'm concerned, so Kansas City wins it. And the AFC South, the only good team I see in that division is Houston, so I think the Texans repeat as division champs. My 3 wild card teams in the AFC, the Denver Broncos, I think, have a great season. They're a wild card team. I think the Bengals make it on the backs of their offense. They make it in spite of their defense. And the last team in the playoffs in the AFC is the LA Chargers. The Chargers are building off of a good defense. They've got Justin Herbert. I don't know that the Chargers are that great, but I do think they're good enough to be a playoff team this year. In the NFC East, I think the Philadelphia Eagles are an absolute wagon. They win the AFC East, or they win the NFC East again. NFC North, there's some good teams up there. You're not sure what you're going to get with the Vikings. The Bears, you've got Ben Johnson as head coach, and I like Ben Johnson, and Caleb Williams has some more weapons. He's got a better O-line in front of him as well. But I think it's between Detroit and Green Bay, and I think the Lions take it. I think Detroit is a very good team, and I think the Packers also definitely make the playoffs, but I think the Lions just beat them out for the division. And in the NFC West, my prediction, I think San Francisco, if the 49ers stay healthy, I think they will win that division. I know they lost a lot of talent. If they're healthy enough, I think they'll win that division. And my 3 wildcard teams in the NFC, I think the Packers make it as a wildcard team. I think Washington maybe has a little bit of a step back, but they do make it back as a wildcard team again. And, I forgot, the last division, the NFC South, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers definitely repeat as division champs. The rest of that division just isn't very good, I'll be totally honest. Although I do like what Carolina's building down there, and I actually think they finished second in the division, which might be crazy to put them over Atlanta, but I'm going to do it anyways. And most people agree that the Saints will be last because the Saints are not in a very good spot on their team. But my wild card teams, Green Bay, Washington, and the last team in the playoffs in the NFC, and it's between a couple. I'm going to go with a little bit of a surprise. I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals to make the playoffs out of the NFC West. I think they just beat out the Seahawks for the last playoff spot. Sam Darnold, it worries me a little bit. They've got Sam Darnold, but they lost some weapons, and Darnold had such a big leap last year that I think I'm a little concerned that you're going to see a fall back down to earth for Darnold. So that's my prediction. My picks for week 1, we'll go to that first. So tonight's kickoff game, the Dallas Cowboys against the Philadelphia Eagles. This is an easy one. I think Philly definitely gets the win. Friday night in Brazil. Yes, we have football on Friday this week. The Kansas City Chiefs against the LA Chargers in Brazil. Call me a Chiefs hater, but I'm going to pick the Chargers to win this game because I think the Chiefs are going to lose some games this year, and they usually do drop a couple in their division. The Sunday 1 o'clock window of games, Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Again, I think the Bucs are a really good team. I think they take the win in that. Bengals at Browns. This is a type of game where Burrow goes off, and even though the Bengals defense isn't very good, the Bengals still get the win. Dolphins at Colts. The Colts are a mess right now. I'm going to pick them to beat the Dolphins. Raiders at Patriots. I think New England definitely gets the win in that one, although I could see the Raiders pulling off the upset maybe. Arizona at New Orleans. This is where the Cardinals' journey to the playoffs starts. They get a win in the Dome to start the year. Steelers at Jets. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is all that good, but I think Pittsburgh's defense does just enough to get the win. Giants at Washington. I think Washington starts the year strong. The Giants have a really rough year. And the last 1 o'clock game, Carolina at Jacksonville. I think Carolina goes into Jacksonville and gets the win in that game. 4:05, Tennessee at Denver. Cam Ward's NFL debut. The Broncos' defense is too much. They win that. 49ers at Seahawks. Again, I think San Francisco, if they're healthy, they're due for a rebound year. They get the win. 4:25, Lions at Packers. That's going to be a good one. And I think the Micah Parsons era debut results in a loss. I think the Lions go and get the win. Texans at Rams. That's going to be a good game. I think Houston gets the win in that one. Sunday Night Football, Ravens at Bills. I already picked the Bills, as I said. And Monday night, Vikings at Bears, the start of the Ben Johnson era. And I'm going to go with the Bears to get the win in that one. So I think we see a few upsets in week 1, but otherwise fairly standard and straightforward. So I'll finish off the show with my Super Bowl prediction. I believe that it is going to be a matchup. The Philadelphia Eagles make it back to the Super Bowl, and the Eagles are going to take on the Buffalo Bills. I do think that this could be the Bills' year. I think the Bills beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship at home to get there. And in Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco, the Buffalo Bills finally are champions of it all. The Bills defeat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. That is my Super Bowl pick for this year. Before I go, I do also want to give a shout out to my mom, who is currently enjoying her first day of retirement. Today would be the first day of school. After 27 years as a middle school counselor, my mom is enjoying retirement. So have a great first not day of school, Mom. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. We will be back next week to recap week 1 of the NFL season as well as week 2 of the college football season. We'll make sure to talk about the Bills and any other relevant sports news. So thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. We'll catch you next week.